Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay. And I'm really sorry that I'm not able to be in beautiful Iceland with you. But as you can imagine, this summer is a real challenge for water management. And I was very happy when I heard also in your introduction now that the big problems of water management that we have, I can say so, on the European continent are also part of your experience in Iceland. So water is very high on the agenda this summer. You have all heard of the very unfortunate recent critical pollution incident of our Oder River, a river that is shared between several countries in Europe. And you've also heard and experienced, many of you, the severe and prolonged droughts that we now have in Europe. The Oder is not an isolated industrial spill. It was actually facilitated by low and slow moving and warm water, like is the case in many other places in Europe right now. So these problems of water quality and water quantity are really linked, and no better tool to address them than the Water Framework Directive, of course. Water scarcity is a very growing concern across the EU and also increasingly coming to the northern countries. It was just mentioned by the minister that there is a specific Nordic perspective on water management. And I think it's clear that this perspective is no longer a perspective of water plenty only, because in countries such as Sweden, for example, there have also been very severe droughts over the last years. So today's challenges to our water resources in the EU are coming from climate change, they are coming from the biodiversity crisis, the resource crisis, and of course, the linked pollution crisis. In addition, we have, of course, the war on European territory, the war in Ukraine, and this adds further pressure to food and energy prices, and of course also has an impact on water management and water security. So increasingly, we see a mismatch between water needs and water supply, and this is already beginning to show, especially in the wake of these ongoing and acute crises. As a result, we need to really think about our water management. It is linked to everything that is on our agenda at the moment. Just to come back to the energy point that I just mentioned, as we know, the production of renewable energy sources takes a lot of water. So water availability needs to be on our mind in this. But in addition, the transition and the temporary measures that Europe now needs to revert to return temporarily to nuclear energy in some cases and to fossil fuels means that the demand for cooling water is high. And again, the transport of coal, as we all know, is a specific challenge at the moment due to low water levels. So at the EU level, we of course have the strategic context of the European Green Deal. And we have the legislative framework that provides the tools to enhance sustainable and climate resilient management of our water resources. And as was already mentioned by the minister, the WFD is at the center of the strategic framework and of course linked to all sectors. It was mentioned that for Iceland in particular, there's agriculture, there's aquaculture, there is tourism, and all these sectors, the Water Framework Directive, as we know, reaches out to. The timing is also very parallel because for the European Green Deal, we are looking towards, of course, 2050, but with several steps on the way, and 2030 is the next one. And this is just preceded by our 2027 for the Water Framework Directive. And for our conference, your conference today and tomorrow, 2027 is, I think, really the time frame that you want to look at. So we have just started this very crucial third water management cycle, and I wanted to set a little bit the scene of what it implies and what it brings in terms of challenges. I already mentioned the European Green Deal, and the European Green Deal has come forward with many concrete actions, and many of them have also a specific place and focus for water. So I think by now, many or most of you are familiar with them. Just to mention maybe the really most important ones at this stage, there's the Circular Economy Action Plan, which seeks a more water efficiency and also more water reuse. There's the Biodiversity Strategy, and Commission has proposed a new nature restoration law. And these actions aim to help our aquatic ecosystems deliver on the many services that we rely on, closely linked to what the Water Framework Directive is hoping to achieve. Then there's, of course, the Zero Pollution Action Plan and the Zero Pollution Ambition that goes through the European Green Deal and many of its initiatives. And last but not least, for the purposes of today, also the EU climate adaptation and resilience strategy. And I know that you have on the program also more direct discussions on, for example, drought management plans. All these tools have now been embedded into the climate adaptation strategy, and we are working very hard to put into practice all these actions. Again, this goes into many sectors, and one important one is also the Common Agricultural Policy. At the moment, as you know, in the Commission, we are assessing member states' strategic plans that they are delivering under the Common Agricultural Policy. And water has been at the top of our minds when the framework for these plans was conceived. But now, with the crises that we have in Europe, of course, we pay specific attention to this, and many member states have also taken up these challenges in their plans, but not all. There is, apart from the Water Framework Directive, which I think for our perspective towards 2027 is really the main tool of water regulation. There is, of course, also the linked directives that are important, and the Floods Directive, which follows the same cycle of 6-year management plans. I think many of you know that in the Commission we assess regularly the implementation of the directives. The last state-of-the-art picture that we received was when the member states reported to us how they were faring midterm through the last cycle. And we have assembled our assessment of all this information of the midterm review of so-called programs of measures in our last implementation report, which the Commission published in December last year. And there we noticed that in all the member states, the implementation of the programs of measures was ongoing. Of course, there were particular challenges also linked to the COVID crisis, which led to delays in many instances. But overall, we could see that the member states were continuously tackling pollution, and also in the area of water quantity management, taking measures to regulate abstraction and to promote water efficiency. The other main finding that we presented in this report was also not new, because we are very much aware of it from previous assessments and discussions. There is still a very big lack of sufficient financing to finance all the measures that need to be taken in the perspective of 2027. But now we are in 2022, so we are in the next water cycle, and at this point in time, we are collecting the river basin management plans and flood risk management plans that the member states were to adopt and then report to us in the Commission by March. And I'm happy to say that this process is actually progressing. It's, of course, not as fast as we would have hoped for in the Commission, but by now we have, I think, 11 member states who have reported the river basin management plans and 12 the flood risk management plans. I think these are the most recent figures, but to be checked because it changes on a daily basis. And happy to say that amongst those who have reported already, there's also some of the Nordic countries. Now, in the Commission, we are starting to assess these plans. And as you also know, the Water Framework Directive foresees these regular implementation reports. So our next deadline in the Commission is at the end of 2024. But we hope to be earlier in the year 2024 because we think it's key for the next step of water management to have these results as early as possible. So there we're also working very closely with the colleagues in the EEA who will be issuing their State of Water report. Before this next reporting actions from the Commission and the EEA, Commission will also come forward with its first zero pollution outlook report, and this will be already at the end of this year under the Zero Pollution Action Plan. This is something that will also come out regularly, and it will take a more integrated approach. So it will look at the outlook and look back, look forward for water, air, and soil. And so it really is, I think, the next step and the way to go. In our assessment specifically of the river basin management plans, we will look at the most critical points with a particular focus, those that in our view are key to achieve as much as possible by 2027. And this, for example, will also include a very close look on how exemptions have been handled. You all know that the Commission has issued very detailed recommendations in its previous implementation report in 2019, and we take these as guidance to guide us through this next assessment process and to look at how the individual points have been incorporated. Coming back to exemptions, because I know that this is of high interest to many of you. Most member states received recommendations in this area, so it's clear that this is something that needs to be looked at carefully, and we also plan under our current work program of the Common Implementation Strategy to do work together with our member states and stakeholders, so many of you in this area. To continue on this bit broader context around the Water Framework Directive, so what is the latest? At the end of July, the Commission has adopted an updated watch list of surface water pollutants. This watch list sits under the Environmental Quality Standards Directive, and every 2 years we add to this list substances where we think monitoring is necessary to see if these substances really are a problem in the aquatic system, and further measures may be needed. So in this last update at the end of July, we identified some pharmaceuticals, some pesticides, and also some other pollutants and added them to the list. This, of course, is a very important step towards the zero pollution ambition, because it means that increased awareness of these substances and the risks they may pose is now being paid. In early August, Commission adopted guidelines on water reuse. This is a very practical document that helps our member states to prepare for the application of the new water reuse regulation, which, as you know, has to be applied as of next June, June 2023. We are very happy to hear that in many member states, preparations are ongoing. This we also see reflected when we look at the CAP strategic plans. And as far as I understand it, it is also at the moment intended to extend the water reuse regulation to our partner countries in the EEA. So very happy about that, and looking forward to working with all of you on that. There's further new legislation that is very important to see in the context of the Water Framework Directive and this crucial current management cycle. So as of January next year, also the new Drinking Water Directive will come into application. In addition, the Industrial Emissions Directive will be revised. So the Commission has made a proposal in April this year, and this proposal also pays particular attention to water efficiency and water reuse. This is currently in the interinstitutional negotiation process. The new nature restoration law has come out and will be negotiated in the coming period. And finally, there will be further updates coming out of the Commission because there's a planned revision of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive for this autumn. And of course, and again, under the Environmental Quality Standards Directive and the Groundwater Directive, a revision of the lists of surface and groundwater pollutants, which will also come out of the Commission this autumn. So as you can see, a lot is going on, and a lot is going on also to react to these big water challenges that we're seeing at the moment, punctual and structural. Here in Brussels at the Commission, we are determined to really maintain the ambition in implementing our water legislation and to better tackle the challenges, especially from climate change that have an impact, as I mentioned, on water quality and quantity. We know that we all need sufficient water of good quality, and incidents like the Oder just recall for everybody how important it is to manage this crucial resource sustainably. We need to become more water resilient, so be able to better deal with too much and too little water. Steps are on the way. But I think this is a topic that will be dominating our agendas now, this autumn, and in the coming period. And really looking forward to how we can address it. I know that the colleagues from the presidency are also planning to pay particular attention to the topic of water resilience. And I think in the context of the common implementation framework, we will be able to look at it, for example, at water directors level also. In the EU, we are aware of our responsibilities not only for the EU and in Europe and with our European partners, but also with our international partners. So as you know, there's a big UN Water Conference in March next year, and we believe that we need to use the momentum and the run-up of this conference to really push for our water topics. We have a lot in Europe that we can be proud of in terms of water management, and we think it's good to share this also with our international partners to demonstrate how we can work together on the examples that we have from our own work here in Europe. And of course, it's also in our own interest because pollution doesn't know borders and is coming in, and there is a real need for solidarity amongst all of us in our water management. So I think I will stop here. I hope that this helps to set the scene for your conference. And again, really happy to have the occasion, at least remotely, to participate and to be with you today. And good luck for your event. I'm sure you will have very interesting discussions. All the best. Thank you very much.